Welcome back to the Fueling Edge podcast. I'm your host, Diva Volundis, and today I'm excited to be joined by Rocío Rivera-Ortega. Rocío is a registered dietitian nutritionist and sports dietitian with a master's degree in nutrition and physical activity and sport. She's also one of the founders of Fuel Labs, a sports nutrition practice dedicated to helping athletes, teams, and organizations optimize their performance through evidence-based nutrition. Her work focuses on translating the latest nutrition science into practical strategies for athletes. With experience working alongside endurance athletes, sports teams, and organizations to improve both performance and long-term health. Today, we'll be talking about sports nutrition, common fueling mistakes athletes make, relative energy deficiency in sport, and the practical habits that can help young athletes perform at their best. Rocío, thank you so much for joining me today on the Fueling Edge podcast.
Thank you, David, for inviting me. I'm so happy and glad to be here.
Thank you. So, to start us off, can you please introduce yourself, tell us about your role, who you work with, and what inspired you to pursue sports nutrition?
To officially introduce myself, I'm Rocío Rivera-Ortega, a sports dietitian from Puerto Rico. I work at Fuel Labs with my colleague Tatiana Velez, which is the founder. We are working together now on this project. Fuel Labs builds sports nutrition programs for athletes, teams, and sports organization. We help them fuel and perform better through nutrition. Also, I do one-on-one with individual athletes, helping them elevate their performance while building a healthy relationship with food. My is in endurance sports. I mostly work with a lot of runners, cyclists, triathletes, including athletes on the Puerto Rico national teams, as well as other athletes in professional, like MLB, water sports, team sports, female athletes, etc. I've always been interested in food, nutrition, having a healthy lifestyle. So that's what made me go through the nutrition studies. The sport nutrition side of it really clicked during my dietetic internship here in Puerto Rico when I did a rotation with the dietitian at the Puerto Rico Olympic Committee. I was so impressed by the science, the physiology, the biochemistry, and how much nutrition actually impacts performance and recovery. So that was really impressive for me. And that was what motivated me to pursue graduate studies in sports nutrition. But also, it connected with my background and experience as a college athlete. I did I did cheerleading. I was a cheerleader. So yeah, it's a very competitive sport. It has a lot of pressure about the way, the aesthetic. And I saw a lot of misinformation and saw my teammates, myself included, underfueling or struggling with poor eating patterns or habits. And I could take that. When I was learning about sport nutrition, I can go back and relate that so many things were wrong and I didn't have the tools or the information. I didn't have any access to a sports dietitian. So that actually also motivated me to start helping athletes and get the knowledge out there, get the education, like give the information for them to feel better and perform better.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate with the underfueling part. I feel like it's on social media, it's more focused and tailored to like bodybuilders, for example, trying to get as lean as possible. But in reality, for athletes, they need so many more calories than like the bodybuilders, for example. And on social media, it doesn't really highlight that part. So it's very important to get your advice, from actual experts rather than just social media alone.
Of course.
Yeah, that was like very interesting how you also dealt with like underfueling as an athlete in like your during like when you're an athlete. Like I can relate to that as well. I play basketball and baseball, so and those are sports where you burn a lot of calories, especially basketball, running down the court multiple times. So that needs a lot of calories to withstand your recovery and like overall performance. And I wasn't doing that, so that's one of the reasons I actually started this podcast, because I want to help other athletes feel the right way so they can perform at their best rather than limiting themselves because of their nutrition, not their skill.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And another question, what's one of the biggest misconceptions you see athletes have about nutrition and fueling, and why do you think that myth is so common?
Well, The most common, I think, is the one about carbs. I have a lot of athletes coming to be afraid of if they should have carb, if they should eat carbs because they don't know if they are bad, if they should avoid them. So that's the first misconception. And it's the opposite. Like carbohydrates are the primary fuel for exercise, for the brain, especially for high intensity training competitions. We need that fuel. We need that energy source. So when athletes cut them, they don't get leader faster. They just run out of gas, their performance drop, and that's when your performance and your competition, your game day is starting to not look so good. So carbs are needed for fueling, also for recovery. It's not just to go through the training, but also to recover. So you the next day for your next session, you also have your fuel tanks replenished. So yeah, carbs are needed for performance. We have a lot of studies that show that carbohydrates are important for recovery, for performance, and for athletes. So, yeah, they're needed. They're not the enemy. We need our carbs to fuel properly and to perform better.
Yeah, definitely. And I wish I knew that a little earlier because I would think only protein was the nutrient you need the most as an athlete, like
Mhm.
after workouts or long practices to rebuild the muscles proteins. But I do realize now that carbohydrates also play a big part in recovery. And knowing that a bit earlier would have definitely allowed my performance to be much better than it was.
I agree. I agree. Definitely for me, also going back, I was like, wow, why we didn't have this information at the right moment.
Yeah, definitely. And can you share a story about an athlete you worked with or you're familiar with whose performance or health improved significantly after making changes to the nutrition?
Yes. Since we're like focusing a little bit on underfueling, on reds, I thought about a case that was the perfect fit for your podcast. So I once worked with a professional athlete, a dancer. So we know that aesthetic sport or dancing sports are very competitive in the weight part, the aesthetic part. They have a lot of pressure on how they look. So usually those are high risk sports for reds or underfueling because they have the constant pressure of how they look, being in a constant way. So with that background in mind, I had this athlete before which reported constantly feeling with low energy, ongoing fatigue. She reported uh, irregular like moods, irritability, a history of disorder eating, also reported constipation and amenorrhea, which amenorrhea is not having the period for more than 3 months. So that was like very a very red flag for me. And I understand all the clinical stuff going on. So we started digging a little bit more on to the diet. And there was a clear pattern. The diet was very low on carbohydrates, very high in protein, but excessively high, relying on protein shakes, protein bars, while restricting foods like fruits, whole grains, um, peanut butter or healthy fats. So I was like catching those red flags while I was working with the athletes, and every show it was very controlled, like feeling fear around certain foods. So all those signs were telling me mm, something's wrong. Probably it's related to underfueling. Probably it's related to reds. So we did clinical studies. We did blood work. So I was gaining more information. Yeah, it was it. We didn't have the medical side approval with the diagnosis, but with all this sign, it was related to reds. After we identified that, I started making changes to the diet. We added more carbs. That was the first thing to correct. We needed to increase the carbohydrate intake to the to meet her needs. Then we added healthy fat, we reduced protein, and in a couple of weeks, she reported feeling with more energy, feeling better. Her mood was more stable. So just by adding more carbs and reducing a little bit the protein, we started to see better results, especially in her energy levels and performance. So that was a huge win for her. And then we started adding more nutrients to the diet, like fruits, vegetables, for those micronutrients. Protein was always adequate, and also started adding the healthy fats for the hormonal health. And all of that help also recover the period like in a couple of 2 months. So that was also our biggest accomplishment. And yeah, we started adding more stuff, but that's like the main and the huge accomplishment that I had with her.
That's great to hear that. And I'm sure she really appreciated your help. I can relate with like those symptoms of like reds and underfueling, like feeling irritable with mood and
Mm-hmm.
just like the gym used to be a fun thing, but like every single day like it felt like a chore to go because I didn't feel recovered and I wasn't like adequately fueling myself with the nutrition I needed to go like work out or play sports and stuff like that. So it felt like a chore instead of something doing for fun or like a hobby. So it also like plays into the mental aspect. Like not only does nutrition help your physical self, but it also like satiates your mental state. If you're craving a food, especially as an athlete, since you're burning so many calories, just have that meal you're taking or have that meal you're wanting because in the end of the day, it all plays in the long run and it's just consistency. So if you have
Of
one
course.
meal that's like not the healthiest, it's okay because in the long run, if you balance out your diet, it'll be very well.
Of course, yeah. Well said.
And like building off on this question, many athletes like know they should eat better, but they don't know what that actually means. What does a well-fueled training day look like for a high school athlete?
Yes. Great question. First, as of the mistakes I have seen on young athlete, the first thing is do not skip meals, especially breakfast. Like to fuel properly and to eat better, you need to at least be eating. And some of them are just not eating enough. So start by just a small change. If you're not doing your three main meals like basics, start doing your main meals. So start doing your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and then start adding the snacks that will help you also meet your caloric needs and all your macronutrient needs. But usually, an example will be having your breakfast, maybe a morning snack, then your lunch, afternoon snack. If you work out on the afternoon, that could be your pre workout snack. After your training session, probably have a post workout snack or your dinner and then a late night snack. So it could be like 5 to 6 meals a day, including the snacks. Um, Try to make your big meals a balanced plate, having your carbs, having your protein, having your vegetables and fruit for micronutrients. So you need all that foundation. Protein, as we know, is important for the muscle recovery, but we need carbohydrates for your energy, also for recovery. And you need your vegetable, you need your colors for your micronutrient to stay healthy and for all the macronutrients to start working and building um, your performance. So basically, that's how it will look. And don't forget to add your hydration. Water, water, water all day with all your meals.
Yeah, that was very well said. Like, I know a lot of friends and like athletes that skip breakfast, just because of time constraints. But eating something is better than nothing. Like even just taking a banana and honey or
Mm-hmm.
like oatmeal, for example, like that. It's better than nothing. And then when you touched up on the micronutrient part, that was also interesting because I know a lot of athletes focus on the macronutrients. Protein, carbohydrates, and fats, but the micronutrients are also very important. Calcium, the vitamins,
Of
minerals.
course.
So making sure you get those, especially as an athlete, is very important for your recovery and your performance. And also, when you touched up on hydration, also like intaking electrolytes, especially if you're in places where the climate's very hot and you sweat a lot, getting those extra electrolytes and like drinking sports drinks can help you maintain your fluid levels.
Of course, yeah. And it depends also in the athlete about the sports they're doing, the context. But yeah, those drinks can also help and are used, but always it has to be very individualized depending on the athlete, the type of sport, the duration, the climate conditions, all of that is taken into context, and then we provide like specific recommendations based on what type of fluid is better for that athlete.
Yeah. So, like, to touch up on what you just said, do like sports nutritionists, do they individualize diets and hydration and all this stuff for athletes specifically rather than just like a tailored general plan?
Of course, that's very important. We need to get to know the athlete, their preferences, the type of sports, the goals, and we need, and it's better to individualize the recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. Because some athletes may not like certain foods and like stuff like
Of
that. So,
course. Yeah, we use the same like sports nutrition principles. So yeah, it's important to talk about the principles, the recommendations, like the concepts. But at the end, I need to individualize. Maybe you like a banana, but maybe my other athlete doesn't like bananas. So maybe his pre-fueling is different from yours, but the context and the recommendations are there. Like you need to eat before practice, but maybe individualizing like the type of foods that we're using based on preferences.
yeah, for sure. And you touched up on this a little bit in the few previous questions, but what are some of the earliest warning signs of underfueling or reds that athletes, parents, and coaches often miss?
Um, when the athlete is telling you that it's hungry all the time, even after eating, reporting low energy, poor concentration, even after getting like a well sleep, um, getting sick constantly, or getting injured. Let me see. When they see that they're doing like a lot, they're training a lot, but they see like the performance just plateau or drops and they don't know why. For female athletes, when you see a mix period, when they don't get the period, they should think a little bit about if food or it's adequate or if they are under fueling, because it's like a very red flag. Unintentional weight loss, or especially losing like a lot of muscle mass. Also mood changes, we talk about that. GI issues, some athletes when they are under fueling they can present some gastrointestinal problems or stomach discomfort.
Well, a lot of the things you said really that's exactly what I dealt with. So it's cool to see how like me not noticing any of these things, but like a few
Yeah.
years later, it's like actually like impacted me. It's like very interesting.
No, and most of the signs are like seen as normal for young athletes. Yeah, you should feel probably tired all the time. You're not recovering well. Well, you didn't sleep well. Yeah, probably it could be one night that you didn't get enough sleep, but you need to look at the pattern. If the athlete is constantly saying, I'm not recovering well, I'm feeling low energy, I don't perform the way I want, we need to start looking at the fueling part.
Yeah, for sure. And this just made me think of that, like, especially for recovery, there's many more aspects than just nutrition, but there's also, sleep, performing different exercises that help athletes' muscles and stuff like that. So nutrition is just one aspect of the recovery for athletes. So you've worked with athletes recovering from injuries. How does proper nutrition help reduce injury risk and support recovery?
Yes, nutrition is crucial for recovering from an injury. And the biggest mistake I see is athletes eating less after an injury because they think I'm not training as much, so I don't need as much food. But it's actually the opposite. Is exactly when your body needs the most support, not less. Like it's a repair process. So if you're gonna repair something, you need the raw materials, you need those nutrients to help your body repair well. For example, your body needs protein to help rebuild the tissue and preserve the muscle mass. We also need carbohydrates to help the higher needs and the higher demands of the healing process. Eating enough overall matter just as much, because when you cut back on food, your body shift from repairing instead of building that tissue again to survival mode instead. So yeah, it's really important to fuel your body properly, eat enough. Also, certain nutrients help too and are important during this process, like vitamin C, zinc, calcium, vitamin D to support tissue, bone repair. Also, some anti inflammatory foods, antioxidants, healthy fats, omega 3s to help manage inflammation. So, yeah, during an injury, you need to pay attention to your nutrition.
Yeah, and that mindset of eating less when you have an injury is exactly what I had. Like just because I thought I wasn't training hard, I didn't need that many calories and like that much food, right? But yeah, you touched on like repairing. The whole point of injury is to recover.
Mhm.
So if you're not eating enough calories and food, then you won't recover properly. So I don't think that's
Yes,
talked about enough.
definitely.
And touching about the social media aspect, athletes are constantly seeing nutrition advice on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and other social medias. How can they tell the difference between evidence based nutrition advice and misinformation?
Good question. Yeah, we're surrounded by a lot of information right now. But the first advice I will give to athletes is to check the credentials of the person that's speaking. Go to the profile, check if it has a background in nutrition. Look for if it's a registered dietitian, it should have RD, RDN. Um, were letters, sorry. Also checking if it has like a master's degree in sports nutrition or nutrition, a PhD, like a deep background in nutrition. That's the first thing. Also check if the recommendations they are giving are based on opinion, because nutrition is a science based practice, so the recommendations are based on science and evidence. So that's another part that is important to review. If they're saying my opinion or this, fix it, my etc. Like be cautious about the recommendations. Also check if what they are saying is backed up by research, not just personal results. If someone is promising like quick fixes, short result or fast results, detoxes, like this is a magic something. When they use like this food only help me da 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 da, like there's no good or bad, there's no better food, or there's not just one food that's gonna make you uh, improve your performance or just drop your performance. So be aware of those signs or claims. But yeah, the first thing is look for the credentials.
Yeah, for sure. And a few years ago, actually, like I would consume a lot of social media. You know, these social media influencers online, they didn't have those like credentials, right? So, you know, maybe they were talking about foods that help them personally, but maybe they were training for a
Mhm.
different side of fitness, maybe for like a bodybuilder, more for like a stage, rather than an athlete trying to perform at peak performance.
Yes. And as like nutrition for aesthetic is not the same as nutrition for performance. So that's a very important thing to know. Also, because out there we have a lot of information that is for general population of or for people just looking to lose weight. So it's not the same for an athlete that is looking for better performance, better recovery. So it's very different.
Yeah, definitely. And high school athletes often have school practices, games, and homework and travel. What are some realistic fueling strategies for athletes with busy schedules?
Yeah. Visit schedules is very common for these athletes. So the goal is looking for realistic goals, not like perfection. Your diet or your nutrition doesn't have to be perfect. So first, as we talked before, don't skip meals, especially breakfast. Keep grab and go snacks in your backpack or your car, like granola bars, fruits, trail mix, jerky. Prep a few things in bulk in advance. Always carry a bottle. Like water needs to be part of your daily hydration. Refill it through the day. If dinner has to be late after practice, don't skip it. Just keep it simple, but recovery is crucial. So you have to eat after practice. And a fueling plan only works or fits if it's real life, like if it is realistic. So don't look for like impossible things to do. Try to make it simple and to fit into your routine.
Yeah, definitely. Because especially like high level athletes with all the travel they have, it's hard to like get the right amount of meals in. So yeah, having the realistic, approach to nutrition is very beneficial not only for the athlete's physical self but also like mental self. Being like knowing that you know what you're gonna eat, like because it's all structured based on your schedule.
Yes, of course. And a note on that, some athletes get worried that when you're traveling a lot, probably you're not gonna be able to rely so much on whole foods or real foods. So it's fine if you need to carry around like granola bars, like pack pack snacks. That could also be part of your plan. It's not bad. It's better to have something that to try to have your perfect very healthy plan or nutrition. So sometimes it's better to keep it simple like I was saying, and if you need to rely on those processed foods, it's fine.
Yeah, for sure. And specifically with any athletes you've worked with, do you ever suggest like meal prepping on like a Sunday or something, just so like the athlete knows what to eat beforehand and they don't stress about that?
Of course, that's like a one of the biggest recommendations we should suggest because it will eliminate that noise during the week of what to prepare, especially for like bulk proteins, bulk carbohydrate. Just stock them in the fridge and you will have like a lot for the week.
Yeah, for sure. And if a high school athlete thinks they might be underfueling or experiencing reds, what should be their first step that they should take?
Well, talk to a professional, especially with a background in sports, someone from the medical staff if you are or if you have in your team someone with a medical background. um, don't keep it to yourself. Obviously talk to your parents, your coach too, but yeah, you need like a professional to assess the case and identify any other clinical symptoms.
Yeah, definitely when I was dealing with underfueling, I mostly kept it to myself, so it was
Yeah,
pretty like on the low, and that's something I wish I should wouldn't have done because talking to people you actually know and like an actual expert in it can
of
really help
course.
you get better in the long run. So
Yeah, if you are aware, like if you're starting to notice that, then try to reach specifically to a sports dietitian. But if you're still in doubt and you're not aware of this underfueling or the reds or low energy availability, maybe just start by going to a a doctor, like a general doctor.
Yeah, for sure. And to end things off, if you could give every young athlete listening one piece of advice that can improve both their health, performance, and mindset, what would it be?
Hmm. I'm always telling my athletes, food is fuel, is not your enemy. So eat enough, constant consistently, sorry, is one of the most powerful performance tools you will have. Most of athletes have food available, and focus on the basics. Don't complicate things. Go to the basics. Eat enough, stay hydrated, sleep well, prioritize recovery. Do that, and you'll see results. You will perform at your best. Nutrition is part of the training, so make it also part of the things you're working to improve.
That's definitely great advice. And the part where you talked about viewing food as like fueling and like being able to improve your performance through it rather than just like eating it just because is very important
Mhm.
because when you know it contributes to your performance as an athlete and you really care about the sport you play, you definitely put it into a perspective that you really want to perform better. So you're definitely going to eat better. So.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Rocío Rivera-Ortega, thank you so much for joining me today on the Fueling Edge podcast. I had a great time talking with you about sports nutrition, REDS, underfueling, and other ways to help athletes perform at their best. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you had a good time.
Yes, I did. Thank you, David, for having me and having this chat. I hope this message get out there to all the young athletes that need this valuable information. And
Definitely.
you're doing
Thank you.
great. I'm
Thank
so
you.
I'm so happy that you're doing this. Like we need this type of content getting out there.
Yeah, this is exactly why I started it to
Mhm.
help give valuable content from experts like you to young athletes